good morning and good afternoon to those of you on the line. This is Ellen Ting, and I'm the tax partner from KPMG Taiwan, responsible for international tax, trade and custom, as well as transfer pricing. But before we talk about the technical part of the TP adjustment rule, we would like to spend a few minutes to discuss why this issue is getting more attention from the business as well as the authorities. With the introduction of BEPS 13 and technical tools used by revenue authorities for collecting tax revenue, tax information, companies are facing the challenges that they cannot allocate the profits just anywhere they would like, because tax authorities will examine whether the profit allocation is reasonable compared with the economic substance. This year, because of COVID-19 and the continuous trade conflicts, it is even more complicated to do tax planning. And many industries face disruptions in their business. At early stage of the pandemic, it was the interruption from supply side, as many plants and businesses were shut down due to lockdown in many countries, especially in this region. While things gradually getting back to normal from supply side, there's a slowing down in demand as people and industries are very conservative in their spending. Some industries suffer more than the others and expected to be in a loss position in 2020, but there are also businesses reporting an astonishing performance due to their unique business model. In the same time, we have seen businesses trying to redesign their supply chain with the goal to lower their customs duty burden or try to spread the production capacity closer to the market to save costs. To the extent businesses are making the decision to restructure their value chain, like shutting down or moving certain production lines around the world, or simply changing the characteristics of a routine distributor to a limited risk distributor, the question will be, which entity will bear the idle cost or the restructuring cost? For group tax heads, the challenges are how to balance between transfer pricing model as well as minimizing the overall tax burden. A simple example is, in the past, a limited risk manufacturer is usually compensated on a cost-plus basis. However, this year, we have seen the plants have significant idle capacity. So, will Taiwan Tax Authority accept the manufacturer also share the system loss realized by the group due to COVID? Or Taiwan Authority will insist the group to follow their transfer pricing policy? For this, I'm sorry to say that we don't have a readily available answer to you. We have to continue to observe the trend. And this is where transfer pricing adjustment come into play. If the contract manufacturer is making too little profit, there's a need to do an upward adjustment. But on the other hand, if the Taiwan manufacturer is making too much profit, there's a need to make a downward TP adjustment. So when planning on how to set the transfer price, it is also crucial to bear in mind there's more than income tax we need to worry about. Customs, import VAT, and even withholding tax are sometimes come into play when we consider the income tax implications. So since financing are facing more pressure to improve their cash flow, it would be great if they can defer the payment or find ways to qualify for tax exemption. The funds can be used for other operation purposes. So while headquarters TP team may want to control the profitability of each entity to reduce the overall tax burden, to local team, especially the ones in Taiwan, since they are the ones facing tax authority and customs authorities, they will be concerned if the profit allocation by the means of TP adjustment will be accepted or could trigger more audits. In the next slide, for today's discussion, we would like to use an example to illustrate why it is important to link between transfer pricing and customs, so you'll understand why we focus on this issue today. Assuming Company A in Taiwan purchased goods from related parties for further distribution in Taiwan, the purchase cost was $200, and with sales revenue at $300, the profit ratio for Company A is 33%. For this distribution entity, let's assume group's profit margin is only 20%. So meaning parent company is making too much profit and the related parties say their original selling price to Company A were too low and they would like to increase the cost and the value by making a TP adjustment. So to Company A, this means they need to realize more cost by a downward TP adjustment, which will reduce their profitability. To achieve the target margin of 20%, Company A's cost will need to be increased from $200 to $240, and the profit is reduced from 100 to 60. For Taiwan, the corporate income tax rate is 20%. So by making a downward adjustment, the tax liability is reduced from $20 to $12. Remember, we mentioned about the customs duty must also be considered. Let's assume the tariff rate for the goods is 10%. So increase of cost from 200 to 40, meaning the potential duty burden will increase from $20 to $24. So by making this downward adjustment to bring down Taiwan's profitability, there is a potential tax saving from income tax of $8 while the duty burden increased by $4. So it seems to make sense to make this downward adjustment because the overall profitability and the tax burden can be reduced. But however, what if the tariff rate is higher than the corporate income tax rate? Because in Taiwan, we do have certain goods that has a very relatively high tariff rate, such in the automobile industry. The tariff rate could be even higher than 20%. So let's assume if the goods imported is subject to a tariff rate at 25%, then the customs duty will increase significantly from $20 to $60, which is even greater than the potential corporate tax savings. Of course, the situation could be opposite. So what if this Company A is making a loss and needs to be compensated by an upward TP adjustment? Then does that mean the original purchase cost was too high, and can we ask for a refund from the customs duty? From the example, we learned that the transfer pricing customs has a competing objective. So your logistics team may want to reduce the import value in order to achieve a lower duty rate. The value of the goods is usually determined at the time of importation. But on the other hand, your finance accounting team may want to increase the cost to lower the income tax taxable income. And also, companies evaluate whether the transfer price is at arm's length based on the aggregate results for the entire year. And sometimes one-time TP adjustment is needed to make sure really parties involved in both sides of the transaction were at arm's length. So as the need to initiate a TP adjustment is usually raised by group TP teams, it is important to also ask the customs teams to also take into consideration what will be their potential impact. So the example illustrated here is based on the assumptions that tax authorities allow companies to freely make TP adjustments, and customs also allow to pay or refund customs duties based on TP reasons. So we want to talk about is this also the case in real life in current practice. In recent years, one of the most frequently asked questions involve both customs and indirect tax is, does Taiwan tax and customs authorities allow companies to make one-time transfer pricing adjustments at year-end? This is a very important question because not all tax authorities allow companies to make TP adjustments, especially those downward ones. In November 2019, Taiwan Ministry of Finance announced a ruling specifically describes the criteria and compliance requirements for making the transfer pricing adjustments. We consider this ruling is a milestone to both Taiwan and TP practice. We will tell you why. In the past, TP adjustment is not always feasible from TP perspective and almost impossible from customs angle. Based on Taiwan TP adjustment rules, Taiwan entities should evaluate whether the controlled transactions are at arm's length at the time of filing income tax returns. So if the TP analysis result indicates the transaction was not at arm's length, taxpayers should make a TP adjustment. However, according to the Taiwan TP adjustment rule, a TP adjustment which will reduce Taiwan enters income tax liability is not allowed. So, based on this rule, in theory, an upward adjustment to increase income tax liability is usually welcome, but a downward one, which will reduce the liability, will be rejected by the tax authority. And you may ask, what if the downward adjustment is booked on the financial statement of the Taiwan entity? Will it still be allowed or disallowed? We have observed in many cases that if tax authority find out that the company increased its costs and expenses by just booking a TP adjustment, especially a downward TP adjustment, they will reject the deductibility of such costs because the TP rule says a downward adjustment is not allowed. If you want to increase your costs on the book, there must be evidence to support an actual increase of the cost. So to support the purchase cost of import goods, the most direct evidence is the import declaration forms. So from custom perspective, many companies come to ask if there's a chance to amend the import declaration forms, even if it means the companies need to pay additional custom duty. And also in the past, as there's no link between customs and direct tax, custom authorities do not agree to revise import declaration forms merely because TP adjustment reason. Customs authority says, based on relevant customs rules, import declaration forms can only be amended when there is error or wrong facts stated in the form, and can only be amended with a very limited period of time after release of goods. There is no legal basis to amend the form based on TP adjustment reason. So you can imagine such practice will create double taxation issues for the company. And so the industry as well as KPMG had lobbied this issue with the mob, urging them have to talk to each other to solve the problem in order to solve multinational companies' double taxation issues. So finally, at the end of 2019, Taiwan MOB announced this ruling for transfer pricing adjustment addressing not only income tax but also including indirect tax and customs duties. In today's webinar, due to time limits, we focus on the customer aspects of the ruling for imported goods type of transactions. There are other types of control transactions and other income and indirect tax issues that also need to be considered. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact us and we will be happy to further discuss with you. So on the next slide, we introduce the key features of the ruling. The first one, the ruling is effective for transactions occurred in or after fiscal year 2020. And we have confirmed with the Ministry of Finance the ruling cannot be retroactively applied to prior year control transactions. And when it comes to transfer pricing adjustment, it could happen in different timing. Taxpayers can voluntarily make the adjustment on its financial statement. The adjustment can be both upward or downward if it qualifies for the new ruling. Or after close of the book, the taxpayer can make any adjustment on its tax return. But in this case, only upward adjustment that will increase the taxable income are allowed. And there are adjustments made by tax authority in the event of the audit. To qualify for the ruling, companies who would like to conduct a TP adjustment have to do so before closing of the book, and you also need to meet the criteria and pay the relevant tax and levies, including customs duties. The general requirement listed in this slide apply to all types of control transactions. The first one, and probably the most important one, is prior to conducting the control transaction, the related parties involved should have a written agreement in place with terms of the transaction and all factors affecting the transfer price listed in the content of the agreement. The agreement can be used to understand the rights and obligations among contracting parties. And in a third-party transaction, terms as well as how the price will be set usually will be stated clearly to avoid confusion or dispute in the future. And If there is a need to revise the terms or prices, usually we will explicitly mention under what situation can this happen. However, oftentimes in a related party arrangement, not all entities have the same bargaining power for setting the title price. A subsidiary or a branch is often told to adopt a TP policy as designed by the headquarters. Therefore, Taiwan Tax Authority are concerned if headquarters would like to characterize Taiwan as a routine or low-risk entity and shifting the so-called excess profits by making a TP adjustment on the books. So to ease their doubts, tax authorities expected for control transactions, the parties involved will also negotiate the agreement terms and the price as if they are already parties. The true spirit of the conducting the transaction at arm's length. There's no guidance or sample on what terms should be included. As the ruling is new, we are yet to observe how tax authorities will enforce this requirement in actual cases. One more thing worth mentioning is, due to enforcement of BAP and also recent trend of shifting the supply chain in different jurisdictions, we have seen more and more companies are reviewing the functional profile and the characteristics of each entity within the group. The corresponding transfer pricing policy and model may also be changed. Therefore, it is a good time to confirm if the agreement entered a few years ago are still valid and if there's a need to revise the agreement. The second and third requirements here are more straightforward. Relevant accounts receivable and payable resulting from the adjustment should be booked in the financial statements. The counterparties involved in the control transaction should concurrently make a corresponding adjustment. We expect tax authority may ask for accounting entries as an evidence to prove the TP adjustment is booked in both sides of the transaction. So when making TP adjustment, in theory, it should be made corresponding to the original control transaction occurred during the year. For instance, for a purchase type of transaction, if you want to adjust the transfer price, it should go back to your cost of goods sold or purchase cost. If you would like to reduce the profitability by other type of control transactions, such as imposing an additional service expense, then there will be other issues you have to worry about, which is including withholding tax or other tax issues. The TP adjustment ruling has described the relevant rules on how to handle other tax in two broad types of transactions. Transactions relevant to import goods and transactions not involved in import goods. So we focus on the customer aspect for the imported goods type of transaction. The first one in this criteria is if the company intends to make a TP adjustment on certain imported goods, it has to make a notation in the import declaration form saying, conduct one-time TP adjustment for X fiscal year. This notation is important, and this notation is like a red flag to customs officers. So when receiving an import declaration form with such wording on it, the customs officers will make a note in the system that the import value of these goods are subject to change and more workers for them are required in later days. This also means that if you did not make the notation on import declaration forms, you cannot revise the transfer price of those goods later in the year. The only chance you can revise the import declaration form is if there's an error or wrong fact on the form. In addition, pro forma invoices need to be attached with the form. We understand this may create some practical difficulties for certain companies, as their billing system only allows issue a commercial invoice once, not twice, and TP adjustments are usually made by an aggregate amount of debit note or credit note. The reason why Taiwan Customs asks for the pro forma invoice when goods are imported is because they consider the import price stated in the import declaration form are still provisional and not finalized yet. There should be a formal conversion invoice when the prices are finalized. So as for the value declaration forms listed here, it is a standard format provided by the Customs Bureau, basically notifying the authorities the import prices are subject to change. So if your company has not made notation on the goods imported this year, and you know maybe there's a need to make year-end adjustment for Taiwan entities, you really must speed up your internal discussion on a few points. One, which product category are likely to be subject to TP adjustment? And second, which batch of imports will need to mark the notation? Because I assume you will not want to make the notation on each single import declaration form. And third is, can offshore party provide a pro forma invoice, or they can only issue invoice once? And finally, is there someone responsible to monitor all the compliance requirements are met? During the importation, provided all the compliance requirements are met, after year end, you have to file an application with the customs authority within 1 month after the end of the fiscal year. Taiwan entity has to submit an application form and relevant supporting document to the customs. This is to request the customs officer to assess the residual value in accordance with the Customs Act, so the company can decide how much they need to pay or receive refund. The application form and supporting documents should contain the following information. 1. The serial number of the import declaration form subject to TP adjustment. Which particular item imported needs to be adjusted to price, and the provisional and final price of the goods. You also need to provide a reason or authority for determining the transaction price. So if we put these requirements in the context of the day-to-day life, say you may have 1,000 import declaration forms throughout the years and across different business units. Each import declaration form, there could be a dozen different items imported. And in the past, you may receive a lump sum TP adjustment, say $10 million. According to this new ruling, you have to break it down not only by business unit, but to specific product type and which import declaration form. You can imagine this requires some detailed calculation, not just from Taiwan side, but also from offshore parties. And like we mentioned earlier, a transaction agreement needs to be attached, as well as official commercial invoice. You also need to provide a payment slip to prove the purchase costs are really borne by Taiwan entities. And during customs authority review, they may ask further questions, and that time you have to provide further information. In response to the TP adjustment, Customs Bureau not only work with MOP to come up with the compliance requirements, they also issue guidance and Q&A, hoping to help the companies to comply. And according to the guideline and Q&A, Customs has reminded the business that for goods which had made the notation for being subject to TP adjustment, Customs declaration method needs to be document review or document review and cargo inspection. What does this mean? This is because the import prices are still provisional, and customs officers would like to double check the relevant information for the TP adjustment is properly disclosed on the form. So they have to do some manual review. It is expected that such review will prolong the lead time for releasing the goods from half days to several days. So it is important to schedule the timing of your importation and carefully select the batch of imports that need to make the TP adjustment, especially for those goods that are under urgent need. Within 1 month after year-end, companies should submit the application form to assess the suitable value. So if the company does not make such application, Customs will assess the import price based on whatever information they have. And if your goods are imported by different customs offices, the application will be handled by the office which handles most of your imports. The Customs will review the value within 4 months after application. This is because Taiwan corporate income tax is due 5 months after year end. So if possible, customs officers would like to provide their assessment results to the company so they have some basis when reporting their cost of goods sold in the income tax return. However, if the officers find out that they need more time to review, they can apply for an extension for up to 2 months. And also in the Q&A announced by the Customs Bureau, they have reminded that if one product item has been imported in multiple times, in multiple forms, do not group the TP adjustment amount just in one import declaration form. Customs officers remind that they still review the import price based on the method described under the Customs Act, and by attributing the entire TP adjustment amount into just one import declaration form will make the price very abnormal. The customs authorities also mentioned that their assessment of price is purely from customs perspective, whether the TP adjustment and the TP result is at arm's length with income tax issue. They will leave it to income tax officers further review. So, if in a later review, tax authorities have different opinion on the TP adjustment and the TP result, the company cannot go back to customs and ask to revise the import declaration forms again. So, the compliance requirements we just mentioned are the major ones which both Taiwan entity as well as offshore parties need to be involved. There are some other small details when filling out the import declaration forms. Those compliance requirements usually can be handled by your logistics or Taiwan customs brokers. So you may feel it is cumbersome to qualify for TP adjustment for imported goods, and why bother going through all these troubles? As we said, in a normal purchase transaction, no matter if it is a related or unrelated party transaction, the purchase cost should be substantiated by supporting documents. And for imported goods, the most common evidence is the price listed in the import declaration form to prove the purchase cost. With this new ruling, Taiwan entities have an opportunity to revise the price on the form so the purchase costs are supportable. In addition, Taiwan tax authorities are concerned multinational companies may use TP to erode Taiwan companies' tax basis. If the company are able to put the effort to collect all these required supporting documents, it is more likely such TP adjustment and the transfer pricing transaction is real, and the group is not merely booking an entry to shift the profits outside from Taiwan. And if the company makes a downward TP adjustment to reduce Taiwan entity's profitability, but fails to meet the criteria under this new ruling, there's a chance tax authority may disallow the TP adjustment based on the TP adjustment rule we mentioned earlier. Having said that, we think this new ruling is a breakthrough from both customs and income tax perspective. It means at last, two authorities are finally willing to discuss and understand each other and work together in order to help the multinational companies to manage their TP position. There's a few tips for adopting this new ruling. The first one is please make sure the agreement for the control transaction is ready. It is important not just for the import goods but also for all types of control transactions. In authorities' review, they often request a copy of agreement as first step to understand the nature of the related party transaction. The agreement should contain a TP policy. The TP policy should be supported by the relevant TP analysis. As there are many customs compliance matters need to be taken care of, we found it very helpful to involve both finance accounting and also the customs people into the discussion so you will know what's the hurdle in your daily life and practice. We suggest to have the conversation earlier and do not wait until last minute because, like customs officers reminded, they do not want to see the TP adjustment, the entire amount booked in just one import declaration form, but they would like to see a more normal import value declared. Maybe you can consider to review your interim TP results and talk to your business people if they foresee the TP result will be changed. For calendar year companies, now is really a good time to do so, and because you still have a few months to think of whether and how to make TP adjustments. At year end, if you are sure that you need to make a TP adjustment and you have made all the compliance requirements during your importation, maybe it is a good idea to start your information collection process earlier because you only have 1 month to do the application. We know there could be some practical issues need to be solved in order to qualify for this issue. If you find it difficult to meet the custom compliance requirements to make TP adjustments, maybe you can consider talking to your TP advisor to specialize in alternative ways. Since TP transfer pricing and customs will continue to be the hot topic, we suggest you have to do your planning earlier than later. In the past, we have seen many companies set a transfer price at the beginning of the year and remain so and do not adjust it throughout the year. But we also see more and more companies adjust their daily transfer price more frequently. They can do it monthly or quarterly, but don't wait until the year end to do just one-time TP adjustment. Nonetheless, when revising your import value, you still have to consider if the magnitude of revision will trigger custom attention and lead to a potential custom audit. In the next session, Sylvia Zhang, our Associate Director of the Trade and Customs team, will brief you on Taiwan Customs audience trends. Now to you, Sylvia.
As Alan just introduced, TP adjustments are normally made when a true-up to achieve target is needed. As this year, COVID-19 has already caused huge damage on economies around the world, so even the companies who normally hit targets are likely to make a true-up. Since 2020 is the first year that one-time TP adjustment is allowed to use, how Taiwan Customs Authority will assess, reevaluate the end-of-the-year adjustment will be a main issue for this and following years. As we know, previously making TP adjustment is disallowed by the Customs Authority, so many companies choose not to disclose the relationship on related party transactions while making import declarations. However, disclosing the relationship of the buyer and the seller is actually required, no matter whether the company is going to make the adjustment or not. Therefore, it is suggested companies may like to conduct a self-assessment on the transaction value of related party transactions, as the Customs Authority will also put more attention on whether the relationship affects the transaction value. Besides, not to declare TP adjustment to Customs Authority will be a high-risk strategy. As from our recent discussion with the Customs Authority, the Customs Authority may take a negative view of business who have enough knowledge to be processing TP adjustments and intend to reduce the business overall tax liability. For example, adjusting the import goods price but not to declare TP adjustment to Customs Authority as the customs duty cost will increase. Under such circumstances, penalties are expected to be imposed. Customer valuation in Taiwan generally follows WTO and WCO rules. The table here gives a comparison of various methods of arriving at the valuation of goods under customs and transfer pricing for income tax purposes. Generally, corporate tax and customs duty has an inverse relationship in the case of related party or associated enterprise transactions. From the customs perspective, the general principle is that the customs value must reflect the real economy value of an import good and take into account all of the elements of that good. In the majority of cases, the customs value must equal the transaction value. This principle applies in equal measure to cross-border transactions between unrelated parties and related group companies. Transfer pricing, on the other hand, typically seeks to apply the arm's length principle to transactions between entities under common control, with the intention of enabling an alignment of the taxation of process with economy value creation. Currently, how the custom value under the one-time TP adjustment will be determined by custom authority is still unknown, as the first assessment will only be made until next year, 2021. However, to be sure, making comprehensive declaration will become required. For companies who wish to practice the one-time TP adjustment, not only need to have all the supporting agreements and documents in place, but also should make the extra payment or claim a refund in respect of all the various direct and indirect taxes. Another change on custom audits will be the assessment period. Currently, according to the Taiwan Custom Act, if the customer would like to conduct a post-entry audit, the customer will have to notify the importer within 6 months from the day following the customs clearance procedure of the import good is complete. Then, the customer will be allowed to perform such post-entry audits in 2 years. For example, a shipment of goods was imported and released by customs on 2020 January 1st. The customs is allowed to raise the post-entry audit by 2020 June 30. If the customs inform the importer that a post-entry audit will be conducted within this 6-month period, then the customs could conduct such an audit anytime no later than 2022 January 1st. On the other hand, if the customs does not conduct the post-entry within 6-month period, the declaration of importation will be considered final and no post-entry audit could be raised afterwards. However, for company who is applying for a one-time TP adjustment, the final duty for goods will have to wait until the assessment is complete by the customs authority in 4 to 6 months after the application is submitted. For example, for shipment of goods imposed on the same 2020 January 1st, once the company files an application for TP adjustment in January 2021, the final duty to be confirmed may have to wait until July 2021. In other words, companies will face longer period of assessment when they would like to adopt the new TP adjustment rule. Here, we also summarize several topics that Taiwan Customs has recently announced and will pay more attention on them. First, implement anti-dumping measures. Currently, anti-dumping duties were imposed to ensure a fair trade environment for Taiwan's domestic industries covering certain products imported from certain countries. For example, last year, Taiwan has extended anti-dumping duties on steel makers from China and South Korea for another 5 years after an investigation. The Customs Authority also reminds that if domestic products experience unfair trade practice on import goods, the representative of the industry may apply for the imposition of anti-dumping duties against import products. The next one, the bill to increase the fines for intentionally mislabeling products as made in Taiwan was passed. The amendment to the Foreign Trade Act raises the maximum fine from 300,000 to 3 million Taiwanese dollars for using fake trade certificates or replacing fake labels of origin on exports and imports. Under the amendment, the minimum fine has been doubled from 30,000 to 60,000 Taiwanese dollars. With the law amendment, the increased fine will also apply to authorized organizations that issue illegal certificates of origin. And the last, global economic activities have been hit by COVID-19. The logistics supply and commodity price of some industries may change greatly, and this is highly possible will be judged as an abnormal situation during customer declaration. Therefore, the customs has proposed 3 operational principles to respond. First, customs should take into account the factors affecting the price due to the epidemic and should refer to relevant domestic and foreign market data in a timely manner to understand the price changes during this period. And the second one, during this period, when the manufacturer applies for relief by putting deposits, the customs authorities will comprehensively consider factors such as the impact of international price, the type of goods, the manufacturer's import record, the goodwill, and assess the equivalent deposits to avoid further dispute. And the last one, for import goods, the price fluctuates greatly and the tax payable cannot be verified immediately. The customs will speed up the processing to help companies to avoid cash fund problems. The last part of this presentation, we are going to introduce the free trade zone in Taiwan. As an island country, export-oriented economy, Taiwan views foreign trade as the backbone of our economic growth. The development of free port plants has been promoted in Taiwan since 2003. After years of development, the business of the free trade area is on the right track and at a more mature stage, as the free trade area has effectively reduced costs and improved efficiency for business. The following slides will show you the key elements about the Taiwan Free Trade Zone. Free Trade Zone, one warehouse, and logistics center. While those facilities are similar, they do have differences, such as the purpose each facility was developed, what business can do with goods, and limitation of service, depending on what a company is trying to accomplish. One type of facility may be greater suited than the other. Free trade zones are designed based on the principle of within national territory but outside customs territory. Manufacturing is allowed within the free trade zone with no immediate duties or taxes payable. Within this specific area, companies can engage in trading, assembling, packaging, repairing, manufacturing, and many other business activities. The movement of the goods within this zone is tax-free and will only be taxed once it is shipped out of the free trade area. Another strong benefit is that there is a limited amount of time that the goods can be warehoused in the free trade zone. In many ways, some warehouses are similar to free trade warehouse. Two of the major differences are that some warehouses are only permitted to hold foreign goods, and the manufacturer is not allowed. Under this type of a program, each good must have a customs entry file, and duties and the traffic are assessed upon entry. Furthermore, customs maintains primary control of all goods and determines when, where, and how they can be moved. Unlike free trade areas, there is a 2-year limit on goods being stored in the bulk warehouse. And here, a logistics center refers to the business who has approved and registered by the customs to operate some warehouse and mainly engage in some warehouse storage, transshipment, and distribution activities. Where in the logistics center, reforming or simple sampling, simple processing is allowed, but not a full manufacturing function can be performed as in the free trade zone. Where the bulk goods stored in the logistics center does not have the 2-year limit as what is applied in the bulk warehouse. In addition to the various functions that can be performed in free trade zones, free trade zones also offer several tax benefits. Goods to be transferred overseas into a free trade zone by a free trade zone enterprise or its operations will be exempt from customs duty, commodity tax, business tax, tobacco and wine tax, trade promotion service fees, and harbor service fees. The business tax, local VAT rate, is also reduced to 0 for transaction of commodities, equipment, and service between free trade zones and domestic tax area or farm area. Shipping domestic goods into free trade zones would also be deemed export. for business who engage in only foundation or supporting activities in Taiwan and handling with procurement, import, storage, or transport in free trade area. The sales income will be 100% exempt from income tax. Starting from 2019, there is more incentive offered for foreign firms in free trade zones. According to the new rule, companies, both domestic companies and foreign companies, that solely support foundation and supporting activity within Taiwan and engaging or appoint a free trade zone entities to do the procurement, importation, storage, or delivery service within free trade zone can apply for income tax exemption on the income from sale of goods. Previously, those foreign firms enjoyed tax-free treatment on the portion of their business income from sale of those goods within Taiwan. It does not exceed 10% of their total sales. Income from sale in Taiwan that exceeds the 10% threshold will still be taxed at the rate of 20%. Now the 10% threshold has been removed. Such law amendment is aimed to attracting more foreign firms to Taiwan as part of the effort to turn the island into a global logistics center.
And here is the free trade zone incentive for the corporate income tax amendment is applied last year. And due to the time factor, so we show you just like a quick review of the free trade zone that's located in Taiwan and the key takeaways for today. So since this year, Taiwan Customs Authority is allowed companies to conduct one-time TP adjustments, and the company would like to do that must meet a certain requirements. And the next is due to the COVID-19, the Taiwan Customs Authority also promised they will speed up the processing of the customs duty valuation in order to help the business to survive during this pandemic. And then the last one is the Taiwan Free Trade Zone introduction that will help you to understand whether there is any tax incentive that you can enjoy that's within either the free trade zone or the fund area.